Hi everyone! For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the type tool and what it can do within Photoshop because there are a lot of options within this program. So in order to find the type tool, when you're looking for it, it is the big letter T that you would find in your toolbar. If you prefer to use your key commands on your keyboard, all you have to do is press the letter T and that will take you to your type tool. If you click and hold on the tool, you're going to see that there's 4 options, and I'm going to go over all 4 of them. You'll have the horizontal type tool. That's kind of the one that I use most of the time. And there's vertical type tool, vertical type mask, and horizontal type mask. So let's just start with the one that we all pretty much use. So there's a couple ways to apply text to your document. So here I created a texture of like feathers. If you want to learn how to do this, I could provide the link for you, but this is not necessary. So all you have to do is just click. And once I click, I could just start typing and say, hey there. Whoops. Right, so it's kind of small. We can't really see it. So I'm going to highlight it. And that's when I'm going to go up here. And I'm going to put it over top of my background. So maybe that might help. There we go. We can see it a little bit better. So over top of my background. There we go. So now you can see it better. And you can see that anytime you type, it's going to create a new layer for you. But since I want to make this larger, there's a couple ways to make this bigger. I can either highlight it and then go up to the top here, click the drop-down menu and select the size that I want. Or I could just type it in. Totally up to you. One thing you want to be aware of is within Photoshop, there is no spell check. So if you type something wrong, you need to catch it yourself. The program's not going to do it for you. So with that, as you can see, if I were to move my mouse below the text, I'd be able to click and move it around. If I were to continue to type here, I can. It will allow me to continue typing, but you can't see it and it falls off the edge of the page. So you kind of want to be aware of your the width of your document when you're typing. And you could always press enter to, bring whatever is missing down below. The other way to enlarge or make your font smaller is you can go to your move tool. And if you put on your show transform controls, you can click and drag your font. You could squish it so you could free transform it. To keep the proportions of your font, which I usually highly recommend, you want to hold down shift and then you can click it to make your font bigger or smaller. And like I said, if you make it bigger than your canvas, it's going to cut it off and you won't be able to see it. And of course, once you're done, you just press enter. When you are typing, I don't know, something. Okay, and I'm done with this. I can either go up here and click the check mark, and that will tell the program that I'm done typing. I could click on a different tool. That's another way of showing that I'm done typing. Pressing enter will not tell the program that you're done typing. It's just telling the program that you want to type more below it. So always make sure to either click on a different tool or click on the green check mark up at the top to tell the program that you're done. Now, if you want to go back and you want to fix something on it, notice how there's like a box around the cursor. When you hover over your font and that box goes away, you can then click on your word or words and then highlight. And then you could do some changes to it. So if I wanted to change the font, you have all these options here on your font. And you can see as I start to hover over it, the font is changing. So what I would probably do in order to be able to see what is happening is I'm going to move my font over here, going back to my tool here. I'm going to highlight it. And now I can go through the fonts and find the one that I would like to use. If you're looking for certain type of font, like if you want to look for a serif font or a sans serif font, remember, serif fonts have the stroke, sans serif fonts don't have the stroke, or display fonts. If you go up to the top here where it says all classes, you click that down arrow and you get all these different options. So if you're looking for a serif font, if I click on this, it's only going to give me all serif fonts that the program offers. Or if I want a sans serif font, it's only going to give me the serif fonts, the sans serif fonts that the program offers, and so on and so on. If I want script or handwritten, here's decorative. Here are your decorative fonts. Choose one, and then you can click off of it so you can see what the font looks like. The other thing that I like to do sometimes, if I'm not sure what font I'm actually looking for and I just want to know, okay, like, you know, where is this going to go? I usually just highlight my font up at the top there and highlight the font on my canvas. And I just click the down arrow. Oops. Usually works. Hold on. I'm going to put it back to all classes. Maybe that's why. I usually just click the down arrow. So it's kind of quicker instead of, you know, just kind of like, you might lose it, whatever font that you found that you would like to use. Can't talk today. But yeah, that's the way that I would go about finding your font. So I'm going to highlight this. This right here, for this font, it doesn't give you any options for a bold or italicized. So I can go here. I'm just going to click Gill Sand because that's what I was on. So now if I click this, it does give you all these different options. So it really depends on the font that you have of what options it provides. Of course, I went over this about different sizes and how you can enlarge your font. This is for about the pixels that are around the letters. So if you want something smooth, if you want it strong, sometimes you're not really going to see a difference, crisp and sharp, but usually, or none. So that one I don't technically play with. Whatever it's set to, I usually leave it at that. And then you have your alignment. So if you want it aligned to the left, center, to the right, you know, those are your options too. If I want to change the color, I have my little color picker box up here. I can click on this and I can find a different color that I want to use. This will be really harsh, but if I wanted to be like a red color, I would just change the color up there and boom, there you have it. That hurts my eyes. I'm going to change it. Maybe do a dark green. All right, so now you can change, you know how to change the color. There's different ways to warping your words. So it's kind of more like word art, I guess you could say, like when you're in, what's the program? Word. Okay. So if I click off of it and I go to my move tool, one way that I can free transform my font is doing a free transform, right click, and then you have scale, rotate, skew. It gives you those type of options. Or the easiest way is going up to this tool up here where it has a T and a curve line. You click on this. Cannot complete your request because of type. Okay. All right, so I had to remove that boldness before I can warp it. So then you get this menu that pops up. You can do an arc. You can do a lower arc, upper arc, bulge, shell, whatever you want. But then whatever one that you want to play around with, you can then kind of play around with the bend. This is where you have a little control of what you want the free transform to do to your words. Do a horizontal distortion, vertical distortion, so you can see what this does. So there's a lot of options here to play around with your words. Now for this one, I only have one word on this layer. So let's just say I wanted to free transform one word within this whole layer here. Say I want to do hope. I have it highlighted. I'm going to go to the free transform up at the top here. Oh, I have another bold on there, so just click OK. However, you're going to notice that if I choose to do the flag, it's going to do the whole layer. So you want to think about that. When you're designing with text and you want your one word to stand out from the rest, that one word has to be on a different layer with everything else. A lot of the times I do not type in big paragraphs or long sentences in Photoshop. I usually almost have every word on a different layer because I have more control of the placement and where things go. If you want to have control of where your font goes within a document, I usually just click and start typing, but you can do a click and drag. So you create a text box. So now if I start typing in here, let's make it bigger. I'm talking about my stud muffin. Stud muffin is one of the cutest cats ever. As you can see, once you got to the edge here of my text box, okay, it created another line of words for me. So I can condense, I can make it longer, okay? You have a lot of control of what your text box looks like, but if it's just a one word, I just usually click. There's no point of you clicking and dragging. Only click and drag if you're planning on typing out a full sentence. Okay, so to give yourself more options, if you look up at the top here, you have this file folder. If I click on this, it's going to make this properties box pop open for your characters. So it does have some repeating options that are located up at the top, such as what's font style, if it's bold, italicized, anything like that, your size. But then this is some of the stuff that we talked about within your typography unit introduction video. Here you have a chance to play with the leading. Remember, that is the spacing between the lines of your words. I don't usually play around with this, but depending on the style or what you're planning on doing, if I wanted to have a 48 point, well, I gotta highlight it, have a 48 point, okay, the space is just kind of condensed. If I want it even smaller than that, of course, that's like too close. Remember, too close of leading makes it harder to read. So usually I just leave it on auto, but depending on the font and you want to play around with it, that's your option. This one right here, this is your tracking. Oh my gosh. Okay, your tracking. Remember, that's the spacing between all letters within your words. So I can play around with the spacing. So the higher the number, the more spacing you're going to have in between your letters. And of course, if you do negative, the closer they're going to get. And of course, if they're closer, it's harder to read. Now I'm going to go back and put that on 0. So it's at its, where it's supposed to be. But this one is for your kerning. So say you just have like this space between your, like my U and my M. I feel like the spacing can be better. I'm just going to click right in between those two letters that I want to fix. And this is where I'm going to fix my kerning. This is where I have the option to play around with, do I want them to be more spaced apart or do I want them to be closer? So the negative is going to bring your letters closer, of course, as the positive and negatives are going to push them farther apart. So that's where you're going to play around with your kerning if you need to. And then, of course, on here you have these little buttons. So if I were to highlight, say I want muffin to be, bold and, be the hierarchy, the first hierarchy. If I put my mouse over top of these, it's going to give me those options for, like, if I want italic, this is all caps. This one is, and of course, you just let your mouse hover over it and it will tell you small caps. So you have your options if you want an underline or a strike through. Totally all up to you. And of course, here you can also change the color. So that's a lot of things that you can do with fonts. So that's just the horizontal type tool. If I wanted, for some reason, to change, the orientation and I wanted to go vertical, there's this button up here. I don't really use it, but I want to show you it. I could flip it so that my words become vertical, but it's also going to read right to left instead of left to right. And of course, if I don't like that, I could just put it back. So that's a nice button right up here up at the top. All right, so then your other options here on your type tool are your vertical tool. So same thing that we just talked about. I can click and drag to create a type box and say, hey there, okay? And I can play around with the size by clicking the little anchor points on either side to make it fit. Okay. And then, of course, if I don't like that, remember it reads right to left. I could always flip it and make it horizontal. The cool thing about these ones, which is like your vertical text and your horizontal type mask tools, are that if I were to type something, oops, let's do it on a different layer, or let's get some of these layers out of here because it makes it very difficult to see what's going on. All right, so I have this, I'm on the horizontal type mask tool, and I just start typing. It's going to turn everything red, but it's not going to stay that way, so just remember that. So let me just do graphics. All right, I can then highlight it. I can change the font. I want something that's a little bit thicker. Okay, and then when I'm done, again, click the check mark. But this one is going to create more of your marching ants. So there's a couple things that I could do. Since this is on a certain, like, it's not really on a layer. So if you look at your layers panel, it didn't create a new layer for you. So what it's going to do, if I just press the delete button, whoops, I have to make sure I'm on a background layer, make sure a layer is selected. If I press the delete button, it's actually going to delete part of that layer of where the words are, but I don't want to do that. I want to create a new layer. I'm going to put that above my background. And then I can pour a color in there. Woo! All right, and it will fill it all up. I can also go to my paintbrush tool, and I can get a little crazy. You know, remember, take your, I could just paint within. I'm like painting on the outside of these marching ants, nothing's happening, right? But I can paint within the words to create like a texture if I wanted to make it fun and interesting. And now since I put it on a new layer, I can move it, but I'm only moving that. I'm actually not moving the words. I have to get rid of the pixels, so Control D. And now if I want to move this around, I can. Of course, same thing. I can enlarge it. I can make it smaller. Press enter when you're happy, so then it clears up. It's almost like graffiti in there. So that's what the mask does. It just, you can use type and have the marching ants. Another thing that you could do if you wanted to, this is a picture I used to help me create my texture, is this. I'm going to do the vertical one. Design. Okay. When I click off of it, I'm going to put it on a new layer because I don't want to click and drag anything. I'm going to you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this instead. Just kidding. Delete that layer. Yes, delete layer 5. Okay, Control D. I can go to an image and I can then use design. Okay. I can then copy, go to this layer over here and paste. And now I just took the texture from an image to create my word. That's what I wanted to do. I had to think it through for a second. Whoops. And then it's on its own layer. So now I can click and move it wherever I want to. I can still go to the vertical text tool and I can select it and I can, made a new layer. All right, so I guess not. I guess for the masking tools, you have to be 100% happy of the look. Okay, so if you want it bold, make it bold before you do a copy and paste. Okay, it is going to be a lot of trial and error, but for the most part, like if I'm doing something fancy, I'll use some masking tools, but for the most part, I'm just using the horizontal tool. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yes, so if, now I got these two here. Okay, I'm just going to select my graphics word here. That's layer 4. I'm going to rename it graphics. Remember, we have the styles that we can add on to the layer styles onto your words. I'm going to move this so we can see it. So if I want to bevel and emboss it, it's going to add in those bevel textures in there. So you can play around with this. Remember to get to the bevel and embossing options. Make sure you click on it so it's highlighted gray. And now you can play around with how three-dimensional you want this to be or not. Okay, you have full control over that. You can play around with an inner shadow. You can can play around. I like the outer shadow. That's outer glow. Oh, drop shadow. All right, distance, play around with the distance so it stands out more from my background. So you have these options because for your first assignment with typography, I am going to be asking you to use some of the layer styles. Do you have to use a lot of them? No, but using just one might make a difference within your design. Click OK. And that's it with typography or with the type tool within Photoshop. If you have any questions, please ask. But tune in for our next video to go over your next assignment, which is using your name for typography.